Okay, I swear I'm not trying to spam you with Shadow of War content, but yesterday we had another video released that was talking about how they're creating one of the new major areas in the game. Now, overall, it's a pretty well put together video where they detail their ideas behind Minas Ithil, where they took inspiration, and the different tactics they used to make the city. I do recommend going and watching the video in full for that extra information, but that's not exactly what this video is going to be about. Instead, I just want to focus on a few tidbits of information towards the gameplay and story that were alluded to during the video. The first thing that they touched on is that Minas Ithil is what Monolith is calling a full-scale human city. The area is going to include 3 layers of the city, some completely taken over by the forces of Mordor. There are going to be strongholds in the lower areas where the invasion has taken hold, while the upper areas hold out the last of the human population. In addition to this, Monolith also said that there's an area outside of the city as well that's largely in a forest. This will likely be populated by the forces of Mordor and will house the bulk of their army. I'd say this area is going to be more reminiscent of the second map Nirn in Shadow of Mordor. And finally, if it wasn't enough, there's also going to be some secret and underground areas to explore. I'm going to assume that most of these are going to take place during the main storyline, so they might not be as free as other parts of the game. The other feeling I got was reminiscent of Assassin's Creed 2, when you would explore around in platforming or puzzle areas. I'm not sure I'm a super big fan of that, but hey, it's something different, so we'll see if that turns out to be the case at all or not. During the video, it's also stated that the maps will be roughly 1.5 to 2 times bigger at least than Shadow of Mordor's, so we do have confirmation of larger areas, which is good to hear, as the first game was pretty small in those terms. One thing I'm really looking forward to right now is the presence of the Witch King and the Nazgul. Having them as main villains actually sounds like it could be a ton of fun. I actually prefer this to fighting against Sauron himself, as honestly, he's supposed to be an all-powerful being, so why would he even care about what's going on at the ground level? We do know he's probably going to feature in the game at some point because he does show up in the original announcement trailer. It was also sort of revealed that Minas Ithil is what eventually becomes Minas Morgul. I'm sure that many people already knew that if you're super into Lord of the Rings lore. I didn't because I like it, but I'm not like amazingly into it, so that's new to me. I think that's really cool. And it might be sort of a spoiler, but I'm pretty sure that anyone can figure out that Talion probably doesn't win against Mordor because, well, then we wouldn't have the actual trilogy of books. Okay, moving on, Monolith touched on the game engine being updated from the ground up to increase their ability to use flora and have better looking textures all around. To be honest, that's one thing I'm a bit skeptical on. Granted, I've only seen videos on YouTube, which is notorious for making game footage look absolutely terrible, but the game looks almost on par with the first one from what I've seen. Granted, the game isn't finished, and it should look more polished than what we see now upon release, but I've also thought that the orcs looked way too smooth, especially the big ones for whatever reason. Rip Aslar, by the way, you will be missed. In the grand scheme of things, I don't really care how much better the game looks though, and I still think the first game looks great, so hopefully they aren't just kind of playing that bit up more than they should be. Now on the gameplay side, I saw some stuff I missed in the last video recap. Mobility is something that's been increased to an insane level. There's part of the video with Talion not only scaling buildings, but outright leaping 15 feet upwards using Wraith form, and all the way across streets. Combine this with teleporting abilities, and Talion is basically a superhero now. I'm okay with that, because the first game did have a bit of a problem with mobility. Even on the smaller maps, you know, traversing them, it could get pretty boring with only Talion's default running speed and slight boost when getting over objects. This feels a lot more encouraging to run around and just kind of explore everywhere. We also saw another new ability, which is that giant pole staff AoE attack to knock back enemies. I'm wondering what the system for all these new attacks is going to be like if you can unlock them and use them all, or if you can only equip certain ones at a time, etc. Kinda similar to Mass Effect Andromeda maybe, but I'm sure there'll be a ton of videos detailing that in the future. And finally, the arena. The freaking arena. I love that idea. Aside from being able to face orc captains, or maybe even just randomize strong orcs inside it, there's also kind of a neat story dynamic that it adds as well. The orcs in the arena aren't hostile to Talion, and are obviously the same ones invading the city. It's very interesting to see Talion engage in the culture of his enemies, and even be allowed safe passage to partake in these arena fights. It kinda drives home how the story features Talion getting more and more connected to the orc culture, and even as enemies, the two sides have a mutual respect for each other. Anyways, those are my general thoughts. If you want to go see the full video, link to that in the description. Of course, it goes over a bunch of really cool things about the architecture, how they made the maps and everything, and I recommend checking it out. If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be covering Shadow of War a lot more as it gets closer to release. If you want to support me, 2 different ways you can do that. If you're watching on VidMe, leave a tip there. And if you want to, you can always support my Patreon as well. Link to that also in the description. I am PattyJack, and I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day.
You know, I met Sauron once. He's an okay guy. Kind of keeps to himself, though. I think he's got a bit of social anxiety. He really likes Christmas, too. Whenever it rolls around, he makes us all go out and get, like, crates upon crates of mandarin oranges. Never seen him throw away the peels, either, so... wonder if he just eats the whole thing. That's kind of weird.